1 minute until showtime. Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Live from Daytona Beach, Florida, bringing a voice to America, speaking the truth, and making America great again 1 hour at a time. It's Trump Talk Now. Trump Talk Now from the Double Barrel Bar and Grill at Volusia Top Gun. Here's your host, Vic Baker.
Greetings, fellow American patriot Republicans, and welcome to Trump Talk Now, the home of fearless truth-telling about America's transformational President Donald J. Trump and his ongoing mission to make America great again. Our show is brought to you locally by Volusia Top Gun in Daytona Beach, Florida, where we're live streaming on Facebook in front of an audience of patriot Republicans. I'm joined tonight by Flagler County's MAGA warrior, Joe Mullins, a delegate to the 2020 Republican National Convention, that never happened, unfortunately, filling in for co-host Joe Fieldus, who is wisely celebrating a 32nd wedding anniversary with his bride, Margie. They're up in St. Augustine. Congratulations, Joe. Enjoy your night of celebration, and welcome, Joe Mullins. Full disclosure, again, we told you Judge Jeanine would be with us tonight, at least on the phone. I feel a little like Charlie Brown because I got a last-minute email from the agent for Judge Jeanine canceling her commitment to be with us on tonight's show. That's the third time. We're moving on. We do expect to have a fascinating conversation tonight with Robert Spencer. He wrote the book, Rating America's Presidents, and he rates each president based on the America First agenda. The question he wants to answer is, how well did each president uphold his oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States? His analysis will be especially enlightening after last night's vice presidential debate. By the way, Mike Pence mopped the floor with Kamala Harris. Senator Harris was full of smirks, smears, and sleazy Democrat slurs. Vice President Mike Pence managed to demolish Harris over fracking, taxing, and packing the Supreme Court. Was it just me, or did it seem as though the Biden campaign wrote all the questions for moderator Susan Page of USA Today? Take note that Susan Page is the official biographer of Fancy Nancy Pelosi. When Page failed to press Kamala Harris to declare whether a Biden administration would pack the Supreme Court, Mike Pence obliged by pressing the question himself 4 times. Her meandering replies, wandering into the racial component of Trump's federal court appointments, which has nothing to do with the question. Pence pointed out 29 cases where presidents have nominated Supreme Court justices during election years. Harris falsely claimed, she made this up, that Abe Lincoln pulled a nomination because it was close to the election for his second term. In fact, he pulled it only because the Senate was not in session at the time. Mike Pence said, let the record show she did not answer the question. They plan to pack the court. Pence tapped a lot of votes from Pennsylvania and other fossil fuel-rich states when he called out Biden and Harris on their earlier vows to ban fracking. He rightly points out that the Biden-Harris Green New Deal would cost $2 trillion or more and eliminate thousands upon thousands of American energy-related jobs, choking the life out of the American economy and sacrificing our energy independence and national security. Harris tried to deny her allegiance to the Green New Deal, but it's on the Biden-Harris website, plain as day. Pence also pointed out that Biden-Harris will increase your taxes by repealing the Trump tax cuts. He threw aside Kamala's claim that $4 trillion in tax hikes will only affect the rich. Pence points out the Trump tax cuts lowered the bottom rate from 15 to 12%. If you increase the rate for the lowest income levels, their taxes go up. It's simple math. The vice president gave the bottom line. On day one, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes. And if you believe it's only going to be for the rich, you can keep your doctor if you want. Kamala spread more lies about Trump's personal taxes and finances. That stuff won't stick either. No one wants to pay more taxes. Trump understands that, and so do you. Harris claimed Trump has lost the trade war with China. Pence slapped back, saying, look, lost the trade war with China? Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden's been a cheerleader for communist China over the past several decades. The vice president pointed to Trump's replacement of the job-killing NAFTA with Trump's USMCA. Everybody knows that NAFTA caused literally thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south of the border. President Trump fought to renegotiate NAFTA, and the United States, Mexico, and Canada agreement is now the law of the land. It was a huge win for the American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But, Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change. In other words, cow farts. Kamala's claim that Joe Biden saved the auto industry is laughable. Pence points out that Obama's recession cost hundreds of thousands of factory jobs, and Trump restored them and more without the magic wand that Obama said would be required. Harris accused Trump of killing 210,000 Americans with the China virus. Pence reminded everyone the virus came from China, and a task force. Trump took early steps with travel bans and a task force, while Democrats were distracted by the impeachment debacle. The vice president reminded everyone that Biden has no original ideas about how to deal with the China virus. He said, the reality is when you look at the Biden plan for dealing with the pandemic, it reads an awful lot like what President Trump and I and our task force have been doing every step of the way. It looks a little bit like plagiarism, something Joe Biden knows a little bit about. Pence declared, we are going to hold China accountable for what they did to America with the coronavirus. Asked about whether she would take a vaccine, she declared, if Donald Trump tells us we should take it, I'm not going to take it. Mike Pence responded with this. The fact that you continue to undermine public confidence in a vaccine, if the vaccine emerges during the Trump administration, I think is unconscionable. Stop playing politics with people's lives. Kamala is without a clue on foreign policy. Pence pointed out that Trump was the first president to keep a promise to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, to eliminate ISIS, to take out ISIS ringleader al-Baghdadi and Iranian terrorist mastermind Soleimani, and to bring terrorists, including the killers of Kayla Mueller, to justice. Kayla's parents were Pence's guests in the audience. You could hear the air wheezing out of Harris by then. Kamala pushed out the same old Democrat lies and smears about Trump disrespecting war dead and white supremacy. Pence forcefully dispelled those lies. So, who won last night's debate? It's very telling that many of the lefty punditocracy have called it a tie. Translated, Pence won by a landslide. Now that was last night. This morning, the Commission on Presidential Debates threw another monkey wrench into the works, declaring that next week's presidential debate would be virtual. That means Biden can stay in his basement, complete with handlers, teleprompters, earpieces, and medical assistants. The commission believes Trump will still be contagious, will still be contagious next week, and we know that's not true. Keep in mind, the commission did not consult with the Trump campaign over this change of venue. Also keep in mind that a virtual format would allow the moderator to cut off the president's microphone any time during the debate. The moderator, by the way, is former Biden aide Steve Scully. This is more nonsense. The president quickly responded, telling Fox News this morning, I'm not going to waste my time on a virtual debate. It's not what debating's all about. It's ridiculous. The president is off the campaign trail for a little while longer, but he'll be on the Rush Limbaugh show for all 3 hours tomorrow in what Rush is billing as the world's largest virtual Trump rally. It's the biggest talk show in America with tens of millions tuning in weekly. You can submit your questions directly to the president by calling in tomorrow. The president returned to the White House Monday after a weekend of aggressive treatment for the China virus at Walter Reed Medical Center. That treatment included a new experimental monoclonal antibody therapy from Regeneron, a treatment that quickly builds up the body's natural immunity. His doctors say he's been symptom and fever-free for days. The president says he feels better than ever, and for a 74-year-old man, the man's a miracle. The left burst into flames when he returned to the White House, stood on the South Portico balcony, the Truman balcony, and took off his mask. How dare he go into his own home without a mask? More nonsense. Other White House staffers have tested positive for COVID. All are recovering well in isolation. The work of the White House goes on. The president is still determined to share his treatment with all Americans. He also invoked the spirit of Churchill and FDR when he told the American people, don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it. You're going to beat it. We still have the best medical equipment. We have the best medicines, all developed recently. Hollywood celebrities are giving thanks, but not the way you might expect. Hanoi Jane Fonda, the 83-year-old hard-left harridan, calls the China virus a gift from God to the left because it might rid them of Donald Trump. Jane, you don't have a prayer. Also this week, supporters erected a giant Trump sign over Hollywood. Even though it was on private property, California's sign Gestapo took it down, citing traffic safety. You've never seen California state workers move this fast. Maybe they could apply some of that effort to cleaning LA's crap-covered sidewalks. And Netflix is learning what happens when you mess with Texas, where a grand jury has indicted the streaming service for its lewd depictions of young girls in a feature called Cuties. Have you disavowed yourself from Netflix yet? There's a lot more serious chum in the water this week now that DNI John Radcliffe has turned 1,000 pages of documents over to John Durham's investigation of Spygate. The probe is now said to expand into Hillary Clinton's documented role in trumping up the Russian collusion delusion hoax against Trump in the first place. She was the start of the whole thing. She paid for it. And Trump has ordered the complete, unredacted declassification of all the documents, so stay tuned. Michael Flynn's attorney, Sidney Powell, is going for the jugular, seeking the dismissal of Judge Emmett Sullivan for his rampant vendetta against the general, even in the face of new overwhelming evidence that the FBI set Flynn up. And get this, you haven't seen many headlines on this because it's only from one outlet, but the Department of Justice has reportedly opened a criminal probe of Joe Biden's role in Spygate and Ukraine. So we'll have to wait and see what happens on that. So fasten your seatbelts, everyone. It's going to be a bumpy ride on November 3rd. I cannot emphasize this enough. We need you to volunteer to knock doors and make phone calls for Trump now. Go to Trump Victory Headquarters at 3741 South Nova Road in Port Orange this Saturday at 9 a.m. Get some coffee and donuts. Team up to knock doors. This is not a slam dunk if we don't go all in. So are you ready to build the greatest landslide of all? Let's do this. Now let's hear from my co-host for tonight, filling in for Joe Fieldus, Flagler's famous MAGA warrior, Joe Mullins.
Guys, it's great to be here. Thank you. You know, Vic, that's some amazing stuff. I sit here and I hear all this, and I think, you know, people are running around saying the president's bringing all this drama, he's bringing all this chaos, and he's not presidential. I look at this and I go, all he's doing is exposing stuff that's been going on for many, many years. He has brought the swamp, the creatures in the swamp, to surface. And it's upsetting the Democratic Party, it's upsetting the liberals, but I've got to applaud the man. He's doing something that we have needed for many years. This will not go away if he goes away. It's only going to get worse, and we're going to see the demise of our country. We've got to remember, when God calls somebody, he doesn't sit there, he doesn't make mistakes. He's called this man, which is very clearly. He didn't call him to be a pastor. He didn't call him to come and witness to us. He called him to drain and fight the nastiest swamp in the world. And until you step in the shoes of him and see what he has put up with and he has endured, you can't judge the man by his actions. I really respect a lot. And just the little bit I go through in this county, in this area, it's nothing compared to what he goes through. But I've been on the side of twisted stories. I've been on the side of personal attacks. I've been on the side with the media. The media loves doing stories on me. But you know what's crazy? They never call me for my side. They just put the side out that they want to. And they can't stand that I communicate on Facebook with the mass majority of the county. I can get news out quicker. I've exposed the fake blogger up there who's nothing more than a liberal newsletter. That's what I call him. He's not a blogger of media. He's a newsletter for the liberal agenda. He attacks the president regularly. He attacks our economy, our businesses. He attacks our government. And in turn, it's killing the reputation of the county. So you've got to expose these people. He dictates the blogs. He'll change the wording that people put in. If you are anti his stories, he won't post it. And this is all that Flagler Live guy. I've rebranded it to Flagler Lies. That's all he's doing. He's getting in there and twisting the story and firing up.
And there are those, Joe, that can't handle the truth. As Mike Pence said, he invoked the late Daniel Patrick Moynihan.
Didn't he do a great job yesterday?
Oh, he did a
he was
fantastic
phenomenal.
job. He was a gentleman, but he was not a pushover. He did not allow the lies to go unchallenged. He used a technique I hope that Trump can realize that Pence just taught a master class in how to conduct a civilized debate with facts.
Yeah.
And one of the great lines, he invoked it twice, from the late Daniel Patrick Moynihan from New York, who was one of the brightest people who ever sat in the U.S. Senate. I interviewed him many times. He was a Democrat who worked with the Republicans. He worked across the aisle, so it was hard to define him. He would say, you're entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Right.
And facts are stubborn things. We have to go with the facts. And we're going to come back with some facts with Robert Spencer, the author of Rating America's Presidents, an American first look at who is best, who is overrated, and who is an absolute disaster. We expect to have him on the screen with us in just a moment, so stay with us on Trump Talk Now. We'll be back in a moment.
Time to drain the swamp. Let's take a timeout on Trump Talk Now. At Embroidery Plus, it's all about the plus. Embroidery Plus can customize your athletic wear, golf apparel, caps, hats. Plus, Embroidery Plus is badges,
buttons, magnets, backpacks, bags, and totes, clocks, watches, plus.
2033 South Ridgewood in South Daytona. They're waiting for your call at 386-255-5880. Embroidery Plus. Let's return now to the Trump Truth. From Volusia Top Gun, it's Trump Talk Now with your host, Vic Baker.
Welcome back, Trumpublicans, here at Volusia Top Gun in Daytona Beach, Florida. Robert Spencer writes, a great president is one who puts America first. He says this in his book, Rating America's Presidents, an America First look at who is best, who is overrated, and who is an absolute disaster. His review of presidential history offers a provocative, intriguing analysis of what exemplifies the policies that maintain American independence at home and abroad. So welcome to our screen here at Trump Talk Now tonight, Robert Spencer.
Thank you.
Robert, thank you for being with us. And I read your book, and I'm a real presidential buff, so I enjoyed every chapter of it. You taught me a number of things about some of our underrated presidents. And so tell us let's start off by this. What was your main measuring stick as you rated presidents? Because we've seen ratings over the years where they have, I think, underrated presidents like Reagan, and even some presidents like Coolidge or Harding were rated very low, Ulysses Grant. And yet, and somebody like Trump would be at the bottom of their scale. But you have a different measure. So how did you go about measuring the presidents?
I measured them on the basis of America first. Did they do well for Americans? In other words, were Americans safer, stronger, more prosperous at the end of the term than they were at the beginning? Then the president was successful. If not, then the president was not successful. It's really that simple, but that's been a principle that has been very seldom applied to American history. And nowadays, it's becoming increasingly clear as young people are going around tearing down statues and such, that our young people have been educated, miseducated, and diseducated about American history and told that it's all just full of racist villains and so on. And they haven't heard about what makes it great. And that's why I wrote this book.
I also noted in the book that you point out that the most important thing you wanted to use in making that measure was how well did they adhere to the promise to defend the oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. I just participated yesterday in a panel discussion against two Democrats on the issue of quote-unquote social justice. I made the argument that the framework of social justice has existed for more than 240 years. We keep forgetting it's there. We have the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, the 19th Amendment, and they all guarantee the rights that are God-given to us. And as long as we defend that Constitution, we will have social justice. Mob rule is not what provides it. But you put that measure on these presidents, and by that measurement, we have some surprising findings from you. I would think in some quarters it's surprising.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Harding, and I think that's one of the biggest surprises because he's ordinarily considered to be a failure. But I give him a 9 on a scale of 0 to 10. And this is because even though he was very self-effacing, he spoke about how the job was too big for him and so on. He actually performed very well as president. He cut regulations, cut taxes, rolled back some of the unconstitutional restrictions on the freedom of speech that the Woodrow Wilson administration had put in. He kept us out of foreign entanglements that would have compromised American sovereignty, like the League of Nations, which was a precursor, of course, to the United Nations. We all see what a disaster the United Nations is now. And so he laid the groundwork for the great period of American prosperity known as the Roaring Twenties. And yet he doesn't get any credit. He's largely forgotten, or if he's remembered at all, it's because of scandal.
And Silent Cal, who came after him, his vice president, then later reelected. Of course, there's a reason they call this the Roaring Twenties. The economy was doing quite well then, in spite of prohibition. Of course,
Yeah.
that kind of created a side economy as well. But Coolidge was another president that goes underrated.
Yeah, the economy was doing great. And this is because the Harding and Coolidge administrations did not interfere in it and did not put a bunch of artificial federal restrictions and stimuli and various things that we're used to now. They didn't put any of that in place. They let the market set the economy, and it did so in a very effective way. This is really just common sense that the market will right itself and people will prosper if they're left alone. And that's really what Harding and Coolidge did in the economic sphere. It's something we very much need to recover nowadays. Coolidge is also great in many ways, but for one of the most important that we need to remember nowadays is that he insisted on assimilation as a condition of immigration and said that you shouldn't even come to the United States if you're not wanting to become an American. Now, if there's ever a principle that has been lost that needs to be recovered, that's it.
Absolutely. Then we have Herbert Hoover, widely regarded to be quite a failure as president. Of course, 1929, a year after he got elected, the first year he was in office, the market crashed in, I think, October that year. And of course, he started, people don't realize or remember from the history that he started tinkering himself with the economy to try to rescue the economy. And of course, FDR, of course, followed up. But some of these programs that we attribute to FDR may have actually started with Hoover. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, very much so. And actually, some of the New Deal brain trust, the people who were behind Roosevelt and devising the New Deal, they actually admitted that they were just continuing what Hoover had started. And so Hoover gets blamed for the Depression, and there's no doubt he was not an effective president. And I rate him a 0 on the scale of 0 to 10 as well. He was not an effective president, though, not because he didn't do enough to combat the Great Depression, but because he did too much. And what he did was the precursor to the New Deal in terms of the massive expansion of federal power outside all restraint that was based on constitutional principles, and the extension of the federal government into so many aspects of Americans' lives in which it has no constitutional warrant to be. All this didn't start under FDR, it started under Hoover.
And then FDR, of course, continued it, and we didn't see a recovery from this depression until we actually entered World War II. That's the fallacy of the New Deal. People say the New Deal saved us, but it really didn't.
No, it made it worse. It almost certainly wouldn't have lasted as long if Roosevelt had left the market alone like Coolidge and Harding had done and let it right itself. It would have, probably quicker. The Depression lasted, as you say, up until World War II, precisely because he had opened up all these federal agencies. And what's going to pay for federal agencies? Taxes. And so you have people who are already hurting economically, and he's raising their taxes. That's only going to make them hurt economically more and prolong the difficulty. So the solutions that Roosevelt implemented for the Great Depression only made it worse. And it's only when we went into a war economy and had the massive expansion of industry to make war materiel that it finally ended.
Taking a couple skips back, we talk about taxes. The the income tax really was enacted under, it was initiated under Taft, a Republican president. That's something people don't realize. It was, I think it came into effect under Woodrow Wilson, but it was enacted, at least initiated under President Taft. At the time, of course, they thought, oh, it was just a little tax. It's not going to be a big deal. But we know what's happened to the income tax since then. The IRS has become a fearsome agency.
And do that.
So we have that. We had this series of Republican presidents, and Teddy Roosevelt was a reformer, but he was not as conservative as a president as you might think. What's your gauge on Teddy Roosevelt? He's up on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, you know, I respect him as a human being. I think he's one of the most compelling personalities ever to be president. A great man, to be sure, a towering figure. But at the same time, I have to take issue with some aspects of his presidency. You noted that Taft instituted the income tax. Taft was a progressive Republican. So was Roosevelt. Progressive is actually a big trick. It's a sleight of hand on the American people, because even to call these people progressives is to grant them their point, is to give them away the ball game. Because what you're saying is, yes, history is progressing toward socialism and internationalism. And so you are progressing toward the natural outcome of things. And I am trying to stop this progression. I'm a Neanderthal. And so
Yeah.
actually, there's nothing progressive about progressivism. It's just state control. And Theodore Roosevelt was very much an initiator of that. And one of the most telling incidents in regard to how he furthered the cause of the massive expansion of the federal government was during a crippling coal strike that lasted on and on through the summer and was threatening to go into the winter. And a lot of people would have been out of coal in northern states. They would have frozen. And Roosevelt said he's just going to send troops to the coal mines that were closed and force them to open. Some people pointed out to him then that it would be unconstitutional to interfere with private businesses in that way. And Roosevelt said, to hell with the Constitution when people want coal. Now, to hell with the Constitution when people want coal, that's a great phrase if you're looking for a man of action. But it's a terrible phrase if you understand that the Constitution is our safeguard against tyranny. And once you establish the precedent, no matter in what context or how good it was that he did that in this particular instance, you've opened the door to the abuse of federal power in numerous other ways. And that's the most damaging legacy of Theodore Roosevelt.
Well, and of course, in our current experience, we have them saying, the hell with the Constitution when we have COVID. It's a similar kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Much the same, actually. The idea that you can set aside the Constitution in a crisis is something that had to be rejected in the Roosevelt administration and has to be rejected now, or essentially the Constitution's a dead letter.
Exactly. Now, Roosevelt, of course, famously was the first president who tried to pack the Supreme Court with no success. That was a spectacular failure on his part. It was a big point in last night's debate, and we congratulate Vice President Pence for asking the question that Susan Page blithely ignored, and we got the answer. The non-answer was the answer, you know. But we realize what the agenda is now with the Supreme Court, right?
Oh, there's no doubt. The Supreme Court is designed to carry out judicial review, that is, to determine whether or not various laws that are enacted are constitutional, are in accord with the Constitution or not. And so the Democrats, in order to ensure the desired outcome in that regard, are planning to add more justices to the court so that they can overcome the conservative majority that would be secured if Amy Coney Barrett is approved and takes a seat on the court. And so this is just an attempt to make an end run around representational government. And Franklin Roosevelt, actually, when he hatched the first court packing scheme, was trying to do the same thing. The court was declaring a lot of New Deal proposals unconstitutional, and so he thought he would just get what he wanted by watering down the court and putting in enough justices to get the votes that he wanted. And so the Democrats now intend to do the same thing.
And your score for Franklin Delano Roosevelt was what on your book? I forgot the score you gave him.
Yeah, I gave him a 1 out of 10. He got the 1 for inspirational leadership during World War II, although I show in the book how he made several catastrophic mistakes in his handling of World War II. Still, he inspired a lot of people. A lot of people revered him during World War II. He was a source of strength. So I gave him the 1 point for that.
You got that at least. Yeah, and then we had Harry Truman, who reminds me a little bit of Andy Jackson, at least in the way he handled things, you know. Randy Jackson's one of my favorite presidents. I think one of Trump's favorite presidents. How do we rank Andy Jackson going back to the 1820s?
I gave him 8 out of 10. And this is because, in the first place, he was, like you say, like Trump, the first populist president. He was the first president who was not born in either Massachusetts or Virginia. And he was a real man of the people, not an aristocrat, not an upper class Brahmin, but somebody who had risen from poverty to become a general and then a politician. And Andrew Jackson worked against tyranny all his life. He fought he was very young during the revolution and was wounded by a British soldier who slashed his arm when he was about 15 years old, as I recall. And he was nonetheless fighting. When he was president, he destroyed the Bank of the United States, which is probably one of the greatest things that any president has ever done. People look at the deep state now, this entrenched bureaucracy that is opposing the president from within the government. This is not a new situation. The first deep state, so to speak, was the Bank of the United States, which was a private organization that held the public funds, and they would wield that influence to get what they wanted, essentially buying congressmen and senators by giving them lavish loans and gifts and so on, and they would thereby secure their loyalty and on that basis get what they wanted. Jackson realized the danger of having an unelected, unaccountable oligarchy that was essentially the pulling the strings of the government. And so he refused to renew the charter of the Bank of the United States under tremendous political pressure. And for that, even though, of course, the bank would return and then the Federal Reserve, nonetheless, Jackson set a very good precedent in that. And of course, he's blamed for the Trail of Tears, the treatment of the Indians. But it's been forgotten in that he actually conceived that as a humanitarian solution to an intractable problem, that the Indians, many of them didn't want to assimilate and become Americans. And so there was either going to be perpetual antagonism or the two groups would live in separate places. Obviously, things did not work out that way, but you can't really say Jackson was some sort of genocidal racist or something of that kind. That's ridiculous.
Robert, if you could stay with us for a moment while we take a brief break, I'd like to discuss with you the 3 top-ranked presidents in your book. If you would like to stay with us for a moment, we'll be back in just a moment. Thank you.
Time to check on the progress of the wall. Let's take a time out on Trump Talk Now. It's racing's original North Turn. If you're looking for a good drink, great entertainment, and the best in food, they're right on the beach at Racing's original North Turn. Rhonda and Walt invite you to come on down to dinner tonight. Here are a couple of testimonials. These are actual testimonials from people who have enjoyed the North Turn. Been there many times, always great food and drinks, great location on the beach. And another, what a great experience. It's my new favorite restaurant in the Daytona Beach area, Racing's Original North Turn on South Atlantic Avenue. That's A1A in Ponce Inlet, about 3.2 miles south of the Dunlawton Bridge and A1A intersection. It's Racing's Original North Turn, a restaurant, museum, bar, gift shop, live music. That's Racing's North Turn. Racing's North Turn has been voted by you top 10 beach bar 7 years in a row. Next year, they're going for top 5. Let's return now to the Trump Truth. From Volusia Top Gun, it's Trump Talk Now with your host, Vic Baker.
Welcome back to Republicans. This segment brought to you locally by Sheds of Daytona. We're back with Robert Spencer, the author of Rating the American Presidents. Robert, Donald Trump, most of the historical rankings I've seen by these leftist historians have ranked him at or near the bottom, or haven't ranked him at all yet because he's still in office. You know, and they continually have, in popular rankings, continually put Obama or Kennedy high on the list. What is your ranking for Obama, by the way? Give me why you rank him where you do.
I rank him a 0 out of 10, and I'll tell you why actually in a story. Barack Obama was seen during the 2008 campaign reading the book The Post-American World by Fareed Zakaria of CNN. And in that book, Fareed Zakaria essentially says that the problem in the world is that America is one superpower, and if we had no superpowers, everything would be okay and there would be peace. So if we weaken America politically, militarily, and economically, then everything will be all right. And so Obama's reading that, and I couldn't help but think that in the 8 years he was president, what did he do but weaken America politically, militarily, and economically? Also, treason is the aid and comfort to the enemy, giving aid and comfort to the enemy. What else then is giving billions of dollars to the Islamic Republic of Iran while they're chanting death to America, but treason? And so Obama is actually one of the worst presidents that the United States has ever had.
Right. We compare that. Now we look at the two Bushes, the elder Bush and Bush W. They didn't get very high rankings from you either. Clinton, not much either, I'm guessing. And there's a reason for that. Also, Eisenhower, surprisingly, didn't get real high ranking from you. And perhaps you could explain a little bit about why Eisenhower didn't rank as high as some people might have expected. Most people thought of him as a mediocre president, but he's middling, though, right?
Yeah, he's middling. And so I didn't rate him among the greats for several reasons. One was the example of Korea became the precedent for these endless wars that President Trump is trying to get us out of now. That for the first time, the United States stopped fighting wars to win them. Now, maybe it was wise to do that with Korea because he didn't want to get us involved in a war with communist China and the Soviet Union. And that's perfectly reasonable, but it set a bad precedent. That we just fought for the status quo ante of the Korean Peninsula being divided and then left. Well, actually didn't leave, but just stayed there until now. But even worse,
laid a premise
in the
for
2016
Vietnam,
election, yes, exactly. In the 2016 election, it became clear, I think clear to a lot of people for the first time, that we don't really have a two-party system in the United States. We have one dominant party that controls not only the House of Representatives, but the establishment media, the educational system, the entertainment industry, pretty much everything. And then we have another party that is the loyal minority that says, yes, we want to do exactly what you want, but we'll just do it a little more efficiently. And then there's Trump. So we really have had for decades now what is essentially a one-party system in two factions. And Eisenhower is to a great degree responsible for that, because when he was elected in 1952, he was the first Republican to win since 1928. And in between, of course, was the New Deal. A lot of people assumed that he was going to roll back a lot of the New Deal policies and end the era of the massive growth of the federal government. But he didn't. As a matter of fact, he signed on to the New Deal. He said he wasn't going to accept Republicans not accepting the New Deal. So he made the Republican Party into this weak, pale copy of the Democrats instead of a genuine opposition.
And as much as Nixon was despised by the left, he really wasn't that hardline conservative. He was rather a liberal Republican as well, as we look at the EPA
Yeah, very
and
much
his
so.
other initiatives, including affirmative action, I believe. Some of that started under Nixon. It started under Johnson and moved into Nixon, and Nixon didn't roll back Johnson very much either. So now getting to Trump, you've talked about Trump being different. Of course, we have Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, who kept the nation from falling into pieces. We have the founding president who set the template for all of them to follow. And you have those two presidents, Lincoln and Washington, rightly on Mount Rushmore, ranking at tens. But you also gave what ranking to President Trump?
I gave him a 10 as well. And this is because he's the first America First president in decades. From George H.W. Bush on, we've been governed by internationalists who are allowing us to drift into socialism, and essentially they've been presiding over the decline of the United States. The massive outsourcing of our industries to China, Mexico, Canada, the entering into these crippling international agreements like the Paris Climate Accord that would have destroyed the American economy, and Trump ended all that. And meanwhile, he stood tall on the international stage, brought peace to between Israel and some of its neighbors in the Middle East, something that nobody else ever thought was going to be possible at all, and stood up to the Palestinian jihadis by recognizing Israel's capital as Jerusalem. He's transformed the international environment in doing all this. Really, if the Nobel Peace Prize were actually honest and fair, he would certainly get it. There wouldn't even be any other contender. But he probably won't get it because it's really the Nobel Leftist Peace Prize. But in any case, the president has reaffirmed the principle of America first. He has made America more prosperous and stronger, and he has brought peace internationally in many areas. So really, this is a remarkable presidency, a wonderful time to be alive. He's accomplished things that other people have not even dreamed of. If John McCain or Mitt Romney had become president, they would have just carried out essentially the Democratic agenda. And Trump has instead radically changed the political landscape for the better.
Final question to you, Robert Spencer. You've studied the presidents, all 45 of them, quite extensively. As you gauge the American people, do you think they get it? Do you think they understand what this president has done for us and for this country? Do you think that the American people know enough about what this president has done in spite of the flood tide of negative publicity and skullduggery to reelect this man and give him 4 more years to continue what he's doing for us?
Yes, some do. We'll see whether enough do on November 3rd or November 10th or whatever, whenever the election actually ends. But some certainly do. I mean, I watched the Trump rallies, and it's extraordinary with the chanting of "We love you." Can you remember any presidential candidate of any party having a chant like that? The president, because of all he's done for America, has inspired tremendous loyalty and even affection in a large segment of the American people who do recognize how remarkable he is and how extraordinary his administration has been against incredible obstacles. But of course, because of the establishment media propaganda and lies, there's also half of the electorate, roughly half, that thinks he's one of the worst people who's ever been in the White House and is determined to get him out. And so this is a world historical showdown we're coming toward.
He's broken a lot of paradigms. He's smashed a lot of cozy little nests, and he is doing things. Right now, he says we're going to bring our boys home from Afghanistan after 19 years. He's bringing peace to the Mideast. He's made us energy independent. He's putting people on their feet. He raised up minorities in a way that they've never seen before in their entire history under the Democrats. What a president we have, and you're right. What a time we live in. It's the ancient Chinese curse.
People don't realize what all he has done and how great this economy is till it leaves. And all these people that are complaining are these individuals that are making all this noise are enjoying the benefits of his economy.
They are. Robert Spencer, you've been very gracious to us. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom. Your book is fascinating. I recommend it to everybody. Rating the American Presidents. I hope everybody goes and buys this book because it's an education. It's also a very entertaining book. It's fun to read. And you broke it into 45 chapters, one for every president. Grover Cleveland gets 2 because he was 2 non-consecutive presidents. But he was from Buffalo, where I come from. And the only president who ever hanged a man, by the way. But anyhow, Robert Spencer, you have been a tremendous guest. I thank you very much from your home in New Hampshire joining us tonight, and we hope to talk to you sometime soon when you come out with another book. Robert Spencer, everybody. Thanks for being on Trump Talk. All right. We'll be back in a moment.
Scanning the networks for fake news. Let's take a time out on Trump Talk Now. ShedsOfDaytona.com has it all. All shapes, all sizes. Wood buildings by Weather King. Cabins, garages, she sheds, man caves. Metal buildings by Carolina. Carports, RV covers, barns, and Overholt greenhouses. Gazebos, screen rooms, dog kennels, chicken coops. They have it all. Come see ShedsOfDaytona.com. Located at the Daytona Flea and Farmers Market, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Want more Trump Talk Now? You can go to Blog Talk Radio, search Trump Talk Now, and select your favorite audio past edition. That's Blog Talk Radio, search Trump Talk Now, and select. Now you have more choices. You can go to our Facebook page, Trump Talk Now, scroll down to select your favorite show from our archives, or go to Blog Talk Radio for an audio version. And remember, Patriots, please like us and share us. Help us spread the word. You can watch our broadcast live from anywhere in the world on our Facebook page, Trump Talk Now. Let's return now to the Trump Truth. From Volusia Top Gun, it's Trump Talk Now with your host, Vic Baker.
Welcome back, Trumpublicans. This segment brought to you locally by Racing's North Turn. Boy, Robert Spencer, this guy does his homework. You know?
That was incredible.
And as an aficionado of the American presidency, I've studied a lot of these things, and so some interesting trivia through the years from our various 45 presidents. As Grover Cleveland, of course, he served twice non-consecutively. He's interrupted by Benjamin Harrison, who was also the grandson of William Henry Harrison, who didn't end well. William Henry Harrison gave the longest inaugural address in history, and he had the shortest presidency. He lasted less than a month. He died of pneumonia.
Wow.
And Zachary Taylor, they say he died from poisoned cherries, but they dug him up a few years back to see if he was murdered, but I guess it was just food poisoning or something like that.
Poison cherries.
And then Millard Fillmore, another Buffalo guy who was elevated to the presidency at that time, was not considered a very successful president. Nothing really happened under his presidency, 13th president. But he celebrated in Buffalo because he was the chancellor of the University of Buffalo, the first chancellor. He founded the Buffalo Science Museum and a museum and the Buffalo Public Library. You know, he was quite a local leader, you know. But Cleveland was the sheriff of Erie County, and he actually was the hangman. He used to pull the lever to hang people in Niagara Square as the sheriff. And he was known as Big Steve, and he used to have fist fights outside of taverns. He was quite an interesting president. So when they talk about a president being unpresidential, I can bring up a lot of presidents. Andrew Jackson got in a few fights during his presidency. Grover Cleveland certainly did, the fisticuffs. And
they didn't call any other officials a name, did they?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There was one man almost caned to death on the floor of the Congress.
Wow.
And they had bitter talks over slavery all the way from our founding all up to the Civil War. I mean, slavery was a hotbed issue all the way through. The Republican Party founded in 1856 in Ripon, Wisconsin, and that was the anti-slavery party. And Lincoln eventually became a Republican, of course, and at first he didn't press it hard, but he was really against slavery, but he didn't push it hard to get elected. But the moment he got elected, of course, the South wanted to succeed because they knew what was going to be coming if he became the president. Great emancipator. He's 10 on Mr. Spencer's book.
Well, you know, what's interesting with all this is he brought up some good points, and it's almost rated with the presidents that didn't. You know, I have a lot of people that approach me and go, you need to represent everybody. And I go, how do you do that? I don't know how to serve more than one master. And I know how to say I'm going to do something and walk the talk. President Trump has done that. Abraham Lincoln did that. George Washington did that. The Tens, they did that. Mm-hmm. They went and boldly did not pay attention to all the craziness. Can you imagine a media back in the Washington and Lincoln days?
Well, they did. They had vicious pamphlets. They had printing
but
presses
could you
back
imagine
there.
the media like we have today?
You realize there was this great feud between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. They were frenemies. They fought fierce political battles with each other, and yet they both died on the same day, July 4th, 50 years after the Declaration of Independence, and with one asking on his deathbed, does Jefferson still live? I think Adams was asking before he died. I can't remember which one was asking about the other. but they both died on the same day, these founding fathers, the 50th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence. These were men, these 5 Virginians, these, the Washington, and then Jefferson. Adams was not the Virginian. He was the outlier. He was not popular. He was not personally popular. His personality was abrasive. He was a New Englander, and he was crusty. He was certainly not a slave. And of course, the other instance is, to get the Constitution ratified, they had to compromise on slavery.
Yeah.
Because the southern states wouldn't sign on to the Constitution if they abolished slavery. But they built in a mechanism whereby someday something could happen. That's why when they say that these men were evil and they, look, in the time, slavery was a common practice and it was accepted. It's not a right thing. By our moral judgment, it's an aberration, right? But they had a way to perfect it and move away from it. Jefferson deplored slavery, but he was a hypocrite because he had slaves. He knew it was wrong. He wanted to free his slaves. Washington wanted to free his slaves. But he knew that the laws of Virginia would not let him do it at the time. So we try to measure the past through a prism of our current circumstances.
It's evolving.
It's not a good measure.
You got to evolve.
Yeah, and people have evolved. Things are different. We don't have things the way we did. We did have a constitution, and the fundamental language was still the work of genius. Other than the Bible, there is no work ever devised by man as great a gift to mankind as the U.S. Constitution. Other countries in the world envy our country over the genius of our founders in that Constitution. The Declaration of the words of the Declaration of Independence itself, that all are created equal, entitled.
I thought you said
liberty.
something very interesting that really brought up a point when you compared the COVID to what they tried to do when they stripped the Constitution. It's true. We came in. That's why so many citizens have reached out and been so upset with government officials, because they feel like their constitutional rights have been taken. They can't walk on a beach. They can't go out and walk freely.
And it's all nonsense.
It is. It's nonsense. But then we take all those rights away, and then when you turn around, I had a guy tell me every election period they talk about the Second Amendment. They're going to take the guns. And I looked at him and I said, if COVID doesn't do anything else, it should open your eyes that they will stop at nothing to strip you of that constitutional right.
Walk through any supermarket and watch everybody walking around like sheep with masks on, and understand a governor like Newsom in California tells people to go to a restaurant now and they have to put their mask on in between bites at the restaurant. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Really? No. If you're 6 feet apart, you're fine, okay? If one person's wearing a mask, the other doesn't have to wear a mask. And the third thing is, and I've said this over and over again, a mask is about as effective as a chain link fence to stop a mosquito. We will be back in just a moment.
Living the American dream. Let's take a time out on Trump Talk Now. There's more Trump Talk Now, Patriots. You can catch us live on our Facebook page, Trump Talk Now. You can watch a previous show on our same Facebook page, Trump Talk Now. You can also stream our audio version on Blog Talk Radio. Search for Trump Talk Now. And coming soon will be our past shows streaming on our YouTube channel, Trump Talk Now. We wish to thank our host, Volusia Top Gun, and the Double Barrel Restaurant. If you need anything related to guns, Volusia Top Gun is a must-stop. From retail to lessons and instruction to gun range, it's all here. Let's return now to the Trump Truth. From Volusia Top Gun, it's Trump Talk Now with your host, Vic Baker.
Welcome back, Trump Republicans. This segment brought to you locally by Embroidery Plus. Donald Trump gets COVID, walks to the helicopter, goes to the hospital. Trump rally develops outside the hospital through the weekend. He sends out pizza to the people. He decides to get in his motorcade, take a drive around. The media goes nuts. He's infecting people. Well, first of all, think this through, folks. The Secret Service is with the president all the time, no matter where he is, whether he's in a car or in a hospital suite. Bullcrap. He did what leaders do. He gave reassurance to, I don't know about you, but Joe, my wife, I went in to tell her the president is being flown to Walter Reed. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. All of a sudden, we watched him get in that helicopter. We had tears in our eyes. We watched him walk out of the helicopter. We had tears in our eyes. How did we know how this was going to turn out? We didn't, right? So the markets were, everybody's scared to death. Look at, and then we have these evil people on the left wishing him death, wishing the worst on him. And they have the unmitigated gall to point to anybody in a supercilious way and say they're holier than thou. When they're wishing death on someone because they don't like them? Really? I mean, I'm sorry, but even my worst enemy, I don't wish these things on. That's tempting karma, or that's tempting God. I'm sorry. God has a sense of humor, you know. And so Trump is in there. He's got a presidential suite in the medical center, which used to be Bethesda Naval Hospital, but they closed down. I think the new Walter Reed is where Bethesda used to be, and it's one facility now. But there's a whole wing that's a presidential suite. So it's like a White House that's set aside just for his use. And he worked through the weekend. He made phone calls, he signed documents. The media say, oh, he's signing blank pieces of paper. Oh, really? He makes a video speech. They shoot that down. Then he comes home, and he walks out of the helicopter, walks up the steps to the Truman balcony on the south portico of the White House, takes off the mask, and they go nuts. He's endangering the photographer behind him. The photographer's behind him, 6 feet away. So he's not breathing on the photographer. The photographer's doing his job. And other people in the White House have got COVID, so okay. You know, have you ever caught the flu? Have you ever caught a cold? You catch things. Life does this to you. George Carlin did a routine 20 years ago about when he was a kid in New York. They used to swim in the Hudson River. It was filled with filth. Hypodermic needles, dead bodies, razor blades, you name it. He came out every day, went home to dinner, healthy as a horse, because they exposed themselves to this stuff. Something is going to kill you someday. You're going to die. Just understand that. Whether it's COVID or a bus hitting you or somebody shooting you or you just die of natural causes or old age. You're going to die. We're all going to die. But you got to live. So what does the president say? Don't let COVID dominate your life.
Absolutely.
What did FDR say? We have nothing to fear but fear itself. What did Churchill say? We will never surrender. Never. Donald Trump is a leader for this country, and that's why he's a leader. He got state-of-the-art treatment, Regeneron, which is monoclonal antibodies, which build up an immunity well beyond. Now he has antibodies against COVID. He's already feeling healthier than he has, he says, in 20 years. He feels terrific. He's a few pounds overweight. So am I. You're not, but I am. Anyhow, but the point is, yeah, we all have these things, these factors in our lives. As we tick on the clock in the calendar, we're going to get a little older, things happen. But this president is determined to share whatever they did with him with you. And he wants to make sure it doesn't cost you anything out of pocket. They say he's trying to get rid of pre-existing coverage for pre-existing conditions. No. The Supreme Court, after Amy Coney Barrett is seated on the Supreme Court, will consider a few days after the election whether to throw out that Obamacare travesty once and for all. And the fact is, the mandate is gone because the tax is gone. Roberts' excuse for allowing it is gone because there's no longer a tax. That's what he used to justify it.
Right.
They're going to be hard-pressed to keep it. But the president has a plan in place. He's already put the drug makers on notice. They're going to have to lower their prices to the lowest price available in the world, which is the way it should have been in the first place. But Medicare is stupid because it's run by bureaucrats, not by businessmen. The reason things are going well is because we have a businessman who understands how to fix things when they don't work. If he was building a building and something was wrong, fix it now, or people might get hurt, right? So when we've been doing the same thing, the same way for 70 years in the Mideast trying to achieve peace, and it hasn't worked, all the wise men said, Trump is wrong. He's going to blow this up. He's doing something they haven't done, and guess what? It's working because it's common sense. That's what you elected. You know why you elected it? Because you're sick and tired of being told by these people in Washington and Hollywood and New York that you're stupid. You're not stupid. You work for a living. You earn a paycheck. You pay taxes. You raise families. You teach your kids how to live a good life. And they're trashing your country. They're stealing your country. And look at what the Bidens, all this wealth that they're accumulating, Hunter Biden's under investigation, his business partner's under investigation again. And they don't want to talk about Hunter Biden and the corruption. They want to talk about Trump's taxes. And by the way, he did pay taxes. He prepaid taxes for those years. That's why he got a small amount he had to pay that year. That's nonsense. Trump's taxes are not illegal. He did what was legal. And we are going to face this after the election. I'm just warning you right now, because I'm predicting we're still going to win a landslide.
Absolutely.
Too many people I'm bumping into feel the same way. Everybody is, as Howard Beale said in the movie Network in 1976, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. The American people have had it up to here with this nonsense. Fancy Nancy's talking about the 25th Amendment tomorrow to remove Trump. Well, why? Because he beat COVID? Why? Because he won't go to the debate? Because it's virtual? Because they want to virtually tie him up in knots? No. Bullcrap. Want to thank our crew. This has been a fast-moving show, Joe, and I haven't given you much chance to get a word in edgeway. Our team, Shane Stanton, the Volt, our Director of Technology, who brings the pictures here, and the sound and everything else. Stacy Brinkerhoff, our Assistant Producer. Kathy Abelgarth, who handles our business development. Robert Mara, Mr. Clean, our Assistant Producer, and our boss, Mike Maltain, the founder of Trump Talk 9, Executive Producer. And next week, we're going to have another great author, John O'Connor, who wrote Postgate, an expose of the Washington Post. And Joe, a few final words from you.
We also have the Saturday Live Shop Play at 9:30 on WNZF, and it will be on Facebook. We've got the Republican committeeman for Volusia. Vic, you're going to be on that.
Yeah,
you and
with
Dave
Debbie
Sullivan
Phillips,
and Debbie Phillips
and
Sharon Dimmers. Y'all will be doing the show talking about the Republican. You know, really the biggest thing I can tell everybody, make sure you get out there and work hard. This president has worked his tail for us. Let's work hard.
Thanks, folks. See you next week.
Thanks for joining us as we make America great again, 1 hour at a time. Trump Talk Now originates from the Double Barrel Bar and Grill at Volusia Top Gun in Daytona Beach, Florida. Join us next week as we live the American dream on Trump Talk Now.